Hi everyone, it's CajunDIYDiva, and today we are going to make a delicious and healthy spaghetti sauce using all kinds of hidden vegetables. This is great for the kids because you can hide a bunch of vegetables in it and they won't even know they're there. They won't taste them, but all the nutrients and everything will be in there. So here's all the ingredients. I'm using a large can of tomatoes, and this is, you can see how many ounces it is, and 3 cans of tomato paste, olive oil. I have some fresh basil from my garden. I have a red bell pepper. That is red pepper flakes, salt, sea salt, or kosher salt is fine, any kind of salt that you want. It does need a little, tomatoes do need a little salt. Some fresh garlic, onion. We have a yellow squash and a zucchini. I have some fresh parsley from my garden. And some carrots that we're going to dice up. And I didn't have this fresh, so I always put thyme in my sauce and oregano. So I'm going to dice everything up, and then I'll come back to you. Okay, so I've got all my ingredients chopped up and prepped, ready to go and start making this sauce. So the first thing I'm going to do is kind of preheat the pot a little bit, let it go for a couple of seconds, and I just want you to see, look closely at my veggies. Everything's coarsely chopped. It doesn't need to be finely chopped because we're going to puree everything in the sauce after. And I also chopped up my basil and parsley, and I did that coarsely chopped too. You don't need to spend a lot of time on fancy chopping with this recipe because we're going to puree it. So it's easy peasy. Everything's going to look perfect, great, everything. So first thing we're going to do is give a few swirls of olive oil. I'd say this is a 1/4 cup or so of olive oil. And I kind of like to put my hand down there to feel the heat. Make sure it's getting hot. Let me just throw something in. I want to get a little hotter. Get that fire going. I like to hear that when you throw the vegetables in. Now what I'm going to do first is the onions, bell pepper, and carrots first. Those are the veggies I want to do first because they need a little more time to cook, and I like the onions to get a little bit of caramelization. The zucchini, the squash, has a lot more water in it, so I want to do the onions and everything first. So I think it's ready now. So I can't show you what it looks like until after, but you'll be able to hear that. That's what you want to hear. You want to hear that sizzle when you put them in. That way you know that you're going to get caramelization on your onions, because you have kept them in the heat long enough. And the caramelization tends to stop when liquid goes in. So that's why you want to do this first. Just keep adding. I'm sorry about my nails aren't perfect today. Didn't have a chance to go and get my nails done. Let me set this down over here. I'm going to use my spoonula and give it a little stir. And so you can see what that looks like. I'm going to kind of get it all like one even layer and then just let it sizzle for a little bit. Especially want to get those onions because they, on the bottom, because they just release sugars, and that's what makes it caramelize. Did I say it right? Caramelize. And that's what makes a little bit of brown color. Okay. There we go. Okay, so after it's been, I'm just getting a little plate to put my, I don't know where my spoon rest is, so I'm getting a little plate to put my spoonula down. So I think it's been long enough. Now I'm going to add in all of these squashes, the zucchini and the yellow squash. And I actually used just the fat part of that yellow squash and half of the zucchini. If I feel like it needs more, I can put more, but this pot is going to fill up with sauce. So now you can see what it looks like. And now a little bit of liquid has kind of released from the squash. So now I'm going to add the garlic. I don't like to add the garlic until you get some of that liquid in there, because the garlic burns so fast. And the only time you really want to brown garlic first is like if you're making a sauce and you're not really cooking it for a long time, because this gets cooked for a while, so you need extra garlic in it. And you know, garlic is the world. You know, you can use a roasted garlic in this if you want to. I find that it's not necessary, but if you want to roast it first, you can certainly do that. Or if you just have some leftover roasted garlic in the fridge, definitely use it, throw it in. So the more veggies in this, the better. So here's what it looks like. And for the purposes of this video, I'm probably going to just let it, I'll probably go ahead and add the tomatoes in a little sooner than I normally would, just because you don't want to have to wait the whole time for this to cook. So I'm going to add, let me set this down, and I'm going to get my big can of tomatoes. And these are crushed tomatoes. Now, you don't have to have crushed tomatoes. Crushed tomatoes, I think, are better if you want your, if you're not going to put your hand blender in there and grind it all up, but you like it kind of smooth, then it's flattering me in the face. Then you want to use that. Okay, so that immediately, I'm going to turn the heat down a little bit, because tomatoes just tend to boil up and splatter. Now I have all this good stuff left in the pot. I'm not going to waste that. I'm going to look and see if I have a little wine to swirl in there and try to get that last bits of it out, because I never waste any ingredients. But in the meantime, I'm going to, there's my spoon rest. In the meantime, I'm going to get my small spatula so I can get this rich goodness out. And this is what makes the sauce rich and thick. Tomato paste. I tried making, first time I tried making sauce, I was like, what is missing from my sauce? It just is just missing something, and it just wasn't what I expected it to be. And I realized it was the tomato paste. You can't just put canned tomatoes in this kind of slow cooking spaghetti sauce. Actually, it's not a slow cooking spaghetti sauce. This is actually a quick cooking spaghetti sauce. The real Italian cooks would probably cook a sauce like this for, you know, hours. But we're not going to cook it that long. So it's actually, compared to Italy standards, this is a quick cooking sauce. Alright, getting the last of that tomato goodness out of there. And I'm going to go look for some red wine or some white wine to swirl around in these cans to get the last of it out. So I'll be right back. Okay, so yay, I found a bottle of wine that we didn't quite finish. So what I'm going to do is fill up one of these little, not totally fill it up, but take one of these cans and fill it about 3/4 of the way to the top. And I'm going to take the little spatula and just stir it around in there, try to loosen up all that tomato goodness that's stuck in there. Now I'm going to pour it into the next can. You got to get all that stuff because it's so good. Now the third can. It doesn't get totally all of it, but you get the idea. You want to kind of swirl it around since you're going to put the wine in it anyway. And I'm sorry I didn't put the wine and the ingredients in the beginning. We're also probably going to add a little sugar, so just add that to what you would use to make this. And then last but not least, I'm going to pour it into the big can. And I'm just kind of swirling it around in there. And now I'm going to use my spatula and just try to scrape out as much of these tomatoes as I can, and the wine kind of helps you wash it all out. Okay, so there we go. Now I'm just going to stir it. You got to stir it around to break up the big lumps of the really thick tomato paste. So you got to stir it a little bit. It'll eventually break up, but it's good for it to break up right away. And just go ahead and get that to break up. Now at this time, I'm going to add in some sugar. So for a big pot, I'll probably add in maybe about a tablespoon of sugar. And I've got some sea salt here. I'll probably do about half a teaspoon of sea salt to begin with. May need a little bit more, but that's what we're going to start with. I'm also going to add in my red chili flakes. You know, I live in New Orleans, and you got to have some spice in anything you cook. You don't want too much. This is a big pot, and that's really not too much for such a big pot. Now I'm going to add in my parsley and basil. Get that in there. And you know, if you have some, I think I actually have some leftover fresh spinach that I might just go ahead and add that too. So the salt was about half a teaspoon, the sugar was about a tablespoon, The oregano, I'm going to do about half a teaspoon. And all of these are just to taste. I'm going to taste it during the cooking process after it's cooked a little while and see if it needs anything else. So, and this is dried thyme. I didn't have any fresh this time, so, but I really love thyme. Is one of my favorite spices to put in any kind of soup or gumbo or sauce. I love it. So that's about half a teaspoon. Okay, so now we're going to stir, but like I was saying, if I wanted to put in some spinach, that would be excellent in this also. Especially since, you know, some people don't like spinach. I heard a friend say that she didn't like to put that in her sauce because it turns slimy and stringy in the sauce. But we're going to puree this so it doesn't matter. And spinach is so good for you. I put it in smoothies and everything. I love spinach. So, and here's another quick little tip. This is from my mom. This is cider vinegar. I put in just a little dash. My mom put a little dash of vinegar in everything she cooks. And it doesn't matter what it is, anything that's saucy or soupy, she puts a little vinegar. Now, I didn't learn this until I was out of the house and married, and I see her throw something into something she was cooking, and I said, "What was that?" And, you know, it was just something she forgot to tell me. So, now I try to remember to always put it, because it just adds a lot of flavor. So, here's what it looks like. See, you still see all the lumps. It's going to add a lot of sweetness from the onions and the carrots, and it'll get a little tanginess from the tomatoes and the bell peppers, and just the savory from the garlic and the salt. So it's really going to be wonderful. So I'm going to let this cook for a while, and then I'll come back and show you when we're ready to puree, because it really isn't going to change in appearance much until we're ready to puree it. So I'll be right back. Hey, I'm back. I just wanted to show you. I decided to go ahead and add spinach because I just thought the more veggies, more better. So I put two big giant handfuls of spinach in there, and it's just going to cook down. And, you know, spinach shrinks so much when you cook it that, see, let's just make it swallow it like quicksand. See, there it goes. And now it's just going to cook with everything else. Okay, so let's let it cook. Okay, I'm back, and the sauce has been cooking for a while. And all the vegetables, I wouldn't say they're totally perfect, but they're cooked, and they're probably a little al dente right now. But now is the time when I want to puree, so that, and I'm going to turn it down to low so that I don't get splattered when I open it. And I'm going to put in my hand blender, and I'm going to grind everything up. And then let it cook longer so that everything really, like all the bits get spread around and the flavors can mingle and everything, so it gets to be really good. And I also want to say, I tasted it just now, and it doesn't need really anything. Could maybe use a dash more salt, but when you use the better ingredients like the sea salt and, you know, all the fresh peppers, the fresh garlic and everything, and the fresh basil and the fresh parsley, then you don't need as much of the seasoning, because the freshness, those fresh ingredients just make it taste better. So here we go. I'm going to plug in my hand blender. see what it looks like. You see the spinach is kind of turned into strings, kind of, and everything's still really lumpy and chunky. And if I felt like it was a little too thick, you could add some water to this. And right now it's vegetarian. You can take anything, add anything to this sauce. If you like a meat flavor, you could add in some chicken base or beef base, whatever you like. Let me get this camera down so I can have my hands free. Okay, so what I'm going to do is, before I turn it on, I'm going to sink it down into the pot. You want a pot with kind of high sides to do this. And what I do is I'm touching the bottom, and I'm going to keep one side of it touching the bottom but tilt it a little bit. And now I'm going to turn it on. And let's hope it doesn't splatter everything. You might get a big splatter in the camera. And so I just go around, and eventually every part of it will get sucked into the grinding blade. So just keep going around with it until the whole thing is mixed and blended. Now you'll see tiny little specks of something, of green or whatever. But just tell your kids, you know, that's the oregano, that's the basil, and you're not lying, because there is oregano and basil in there. But those are the seasonings you have to put in it to make it taste like spaghetti sauce and not just straight out of the can. We originally came up with this sauce for a friend of mine who didn't like vegetables. This is an adult that we made this up for, but it's great for kids because it's very tasty and they don't see the veggies, so they don't have any problem with it. So now let's check. I'll just put that on the side and bring this over here so you can see. And all the chunks are gone. And that didn't take very long. I might make another pass with it just to make sure we got all the lumps, but a few little lumps don't matter to me. I like chunky. But if I want to give this sauce out to any friends, then I'll probably want to keep it smooth like this. So this was a vegetarian spaghetti sauce with lots of veggies, and it's very healthy and delicious. Now you can put it over pasta, you can make lasagna with it, you can add meatballs to it, you can do anything you want with it. So this is CajunDIYDiva. Thank you for watching. I just wanted to tell you that let this sauce cook about 20 more minutes probably, so that all the veggies can cook and be nice and soft, and you could either eat it right now though if you wanted to, but if you let it cook just a little bit longer, then it gets even better. And I just wanted to tell you that my mother learned to cook from, she lived in Baton Rouge. She lived next door to Tony Bubala, who owned, and he was the chef at Panetta's restaurant, a little restaurant in Baton Rouge that's changed hands a few times, I think. His son took it over for him. He's passed away now. I think his son moved back to Italy, but they taught my mother to make spaghetti sauce, and so I'm just glad that I could pass this along to all of you. So see you next time.